Watch this.
Governor Little putting a little pressure and a fire under the Fed's ash for not putting out wildfires in Idaho sooner. We find out what prompted the governor to get heated. All right, let's get to the meat and potatoes of smoke and potatoes. It's been a smoky summer in the heart of the growing season. Let's just say it's not the side you want with your fries, and scientists agree. The concept of open streets, closed to cars, but better for business? The city of Boise is trying it out in other parts of town to see if it will stick.
You needed to be nice to the Forest Service. I don't. The fact that all our fires are out and all of theirs ran uncontained.
Well, I guess there are still dozens of fires burning across Idaho, and according to Governor Little, not on land controlled by the state of Idaho necessarily. He made it clear during an Idaho Department of Lands meeting yesterday. The situation in the Gem State is not one to take lightly or quietly. It was supposed to be a meeting about the cost of wildfires this season, what the impact and burn scars look like across the state, and how federal and state land, well, how it was managed this summer. And that's kind of where things went sideways. Joe Paris asked Governor Little about setting a fire under federal partners for future seasons.
The hope is that Idaho's long, hot, and smoky fire season is almost over. Idaho's governor is speaking up about the shared management of Idaho land, management that's shared with the federal government.
Fire is always going to be a part of the ecosystem in Idaho, but we've got to do a better job on initial attack.
It can be complicated to comprehend. Idaho is full of state and federal land. There are practical differences in how Idaho attacks fires and how the federal plan deals with it. One example, a fire burning near Stanley, Idaho.
When we originally called the Forest Service about redfish, they said, oh, we're just going to let that burn. And I said, that critical sockeye habitat and all those dead trees not too far away, you better get, and that was early. If they wouldn't have, and they did a good job of containing it, but if they wouldn't have done that, we'd probably had a problem with Stanley earlier.
So what is the holdup for the feds? Now, the governor says it varies, but can go something like this.
Some of it are lawsuits about, can you use retardant there because the retardant will get in the water? And of course, to me, I'm going, the loss of soil, the loss of wildlife habitat is way more detrimental than what the retardant would do.
It's not just a difference of opinion that the governor is worried about. Idaho's budget is greatly impacted by fire management during seasons like this. If federal partners go their own way, Idaho sometimes is left with some issues.
I can't fund education. That means I can't do tax relief. That means if we have to spend $80 or $100 million in a year, and this year it's going to be closer to probably $60 million that we're going to spend, that's real money that the hardworking taxpayers of Idaho are going to have to spend.
Idaho's urgency is something they hope federal partners pick up on.
If you have a fire start in July and start getting big, then it starts creating its own weather, and then you've really got a problem. And it can go, it can consume 50, 100,000 acres.
The bottom line here, Governor Little's comments in the Idaho Department of Land meeting this week were said with the purpose. Put the pressure on federal fire managers to get aggressive.
We want to have a good relationship, but they hear it from me privately all the time. And that was probably my most public pronouncement about, you guys got to do a better job, because when I go around the state, it says, why aren't you putting the fires out? And I says, well, we're putting our fires out.
I can tell you in my conversation with Governor Little, it really came through that he's an Idahoan who's a rancher, who knows agriculture operations, and who has concerns about the future of Idaho and Idaho forest management. Brian, this is not a new topic, of course, but as technology evolves, so does the conversation. But if the federal government's doing one thing and the state of Idaho is doing one thing, it can be complicated.
It's worth pointing out, too, that his family was touched by fire this year when it comes to rangelands burning in the Emmett area, Sweet Ola area. But I was asking you, and we talked about this, how do you know where it goes when it comes to federal land, a fire burning there, then goes into state lands, or vice versa?
Yes.
Who covers what?
So to be very clear, and the governor actually held a press conference where he touched on this earlier in the summer, the state of Idaho works very closely with land managers and the people on the front lines. They have maps, they have protocols, they know exactly how to respond to a fire, and they know exactly, when do we need to pull levers and kind of work together. The difference of opinion, Brian, comes down to the situations where you'll have the federal government and the U.S. Forest Service, for example, they have one lens and they have one idea and their whole plan on how they want to deal with something. For Idaho, we're not really worried about the entire West or the entire country. We have the Idaho problem right here. So you can understand the differences of, I guess, the urgency, but at the same time, the governor makes some really good points. If you jump on it quickly, less smoke in the air, less damage, and less trouble.
Federal budgets could be an issue with this as well, too. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right. Thanks, Joe. Researchers from the University of Idaho and Boise State are studying the correlation between smoke in the air and potatoes in the ground. Now, this is today. This is what scientific studies take years to complete. As you can see, years of covering and waiting for this study we were talking about. I mean, because that clip was from 2022, by the way. Well, we finally have the results of a certain study. Does smoke affect our famous Idaho potatoes? Sophia Bliss has the study and the answer.
A variety of specialties are working together to help support one of the crops Idaho is most known for.
Crescent Burbank, Clearwater.
Yep, you guessed it, the potato. The focus of the study is whether or not wildfire smoke affects our spuds. Even though that's the focus of these folks, there's a byproduct that's impossible to deny.
It was a great collaborative experience.
Multiple people involved in this joint study couldn't help but recognize the work of others.
Dr. Michael Thornton, Dr. Joe Ginthner, Dr. Owen McDougall.
Shin Poo, Laura Bond, AJ Atkins, and Mark Skinner spent a lot of time and effort.
The study has been in the works for about 2 years, but the idea was born long before that.
It was 2012. I was out walking fields with a grower in the state of Washington, and it had been a very smoky year. When I saw a field that just looked distressed, so I asked the grower, I said, "What's going on over here?" And he said, "That variety just doesn't do well in smoke." I was like, "Oh, okay." And he says, "But you plant it now, and you don't know if you're going to have a smoky year or not." So, that was 12 years ago now.
Dr. Addie Waxman works at McCain Foods.
I'm the manager of agronomy for potato storage.
She helped get this study off the ground, and after a 2-year research process, we now have the results. Dr. Owen McDougall, who studies chemistry at Boise State University, was another one of the many scientists involved in the study.
I think what we found is that based on the variety of potato, the smoke can dramatically affect the tuber growth and development.
The study found in smoky conditions, potatoes were smaller, more misshapen, and darker when fried, among other factors that make them less valuable.
One of the most, disconcerting results that came from it was that the smoke decreased what we call U.S. number ones.
Dr. Waxman explains U.S. number ones are the most desirable type of potatoes for both growers and processors.
It's a quality, it's a specific gravity, size, shape, length, width.
They're an ideal shape for making French fries. If the shape or size is off, they will be turned into other potato products like wedges or hash browns, which are less valuable. Depending on their contract, growers can also take a hit if they don't meet a certain benchmark.
The mark is at about 50%. So if they're bringing in less than 50% number ones, then they could take a financial hit with their contract.
But there is some good news. Some potato varieties fared better than others in the smoke. So if a busy fire season is expected, growers can adjust the variety they plant in the spring. And the passion for potatoes runs deep for several of the people that I talked to, including Dr. Waxman. She's been working in the industry for about 20 years, and she was even voted Spud Woman of the Year in 2017 by Spudman Magazine, becoming the first woman to earn the recognition. So, Brian, a lot of care and collaboration with hopes of keeping the Idaho's tubers in tip-top shape.
A woman winning the Spudman Award. I didn't even know that was a thing, so that's amazing.
I didn't either.
This study makes sense because they've studied this when it comes to wine grapes. And granted, though, those are growing above the ground, but it affects the wineries, and the wine, I should say, and the wine grapes. Why wouldn't it affect potatoes?
Right, and Dr. McDougall also said it has affected the flavor of milk as well from cows.
Wow, so it is pretty widespread. All right, thank you very much, Sophia. Well, all but two Senate Republicans once again blocked a Democratic bill that would have made access to IVF a national right. It would have given healthcare providers the ability to perform and insurance companies the cover to pay for in vitro fertilization, regardless of state law. Remember, Alabama Supreme Court ruled in February frozen embryos outside the womb are children? It's giving women's healthcare advocates a bit of a pause, worried that decision would put the pregnancy treatment in the crosshairs of states with abortion bans. So they kind of wanted to get ahead of this. But both Idaho Senators Jim Risch and Mike Crapo voted no on that bill, both back in June and yesterday. And today, both senators referred back to what they said in June when they voted no the first time to explain why they voted no this time. Senator Crapo called yesterday's vote a blatant political show, a continuation of a pattern set earlier this summer meant to advance misinformation about Republicans' stance on IVF. Senator Risch quoted the top of a letter signed by 48 other senators in June saying Senate Democrats have embraced a summer of scare tactics, fear-mongering intended to mislead and confuse the American people. IVF is legal and available in every state. Flip those around. And that may be true, but that was the same way it was for abortion before the Dobbs decision, remember? So you can maybe see why certain lawmakers in some states want to be a little bit more, well, make sure it's a little more concrete. This past legislative session, for example, Democratic Representative Brooke Green of Boise, whose son was born through IVF, tried to get the treatment added to Idaho code when she introduced a bill in late March. But it was a personal bill and it was late in the session, so it really wasn't going to go anywhere anyway. It was about that time Republican Representative John Vanderwoode of Nampa, who is also the chair of the House Health and Welfare Committee, well, he made it clear there is no, quote, statutory obstacle of continued offering of in vitro fertilization treatments in Idaho. So there's no need for a law guaranteeing it, I guess. And, well, now there remains no federal law guaranteeing it either. You know, we learned a lot during the COVID pandemic. We learned the definition of PPE, why wastewater is so important, and who is, or rather who isn't, willing to go along for the collective good. One thing the city of Boise learned, turning streets into pedestrian parkways, well, it pays off. 8th Street in downtown Boise, for example, was closed to cars in the summer of 2020, and it kept people from the prime parking spot right in front of their favorite restaurant or store. But businesses were able to recover some of that lost convenience when the city allowed them to extend their patio seating across the sidewalk, opening up more open air spaces, which is good. It's a popular concept, and recently it's been used by more organizations. The North End Neighborhood Association, for example, they closed down 13th Street in Hyde Park for a day back in May. And now another attempt is happening this weekend on the Boise Bench. Boise Bicycle Project is behind the closing of a section of Latah Street. How is that going to go over? And could we see this trend stick around like it did on 8th Street? Aspen Shumpert asked that of the city and the people that live in the area.
The Boise Bench is gearing up for a great ride.
The streets are a public space, and we can close them and use them as a public space that works for us.
The Boise Bicycle Project, with support from the city and others, is hosting an open streets event to crank up the fun.
There's about 5 hubs of activity: mobility, youth, our open streets hub, community, and our Boise Goat Head Fest zone.
The mile of Latah Street from Cassia Street to Morris Hill Road will be closed off to cars, but not pedestrians. You can walk through the whole thing, stopping for a bite or entertainment.
Gives people that don't usually come up to the bench or Latah a good reason, excuse to come up here and see what's going on. And
Open streets aren't a new thing in Boise, so what if the city closed more streets to cars, like 13th and Hyde Park, with its narrow roads?
I worked in Hyde Park for 10 years, and a little scary going into Hyde Park when there's a bunch of people and some cars are moving fast.
Or Latah Street.
I would prefer it to stay open.
If Latah closed for good, it would affect her work commute.
To close this street, I think, is taking away a lot of options for people.
Others, intrigued.
I don't think the traffic is that busy to justify it. Once it gets as busy as like Vista, then maybe I could see that.
So maybe in the future, but not right now.
It's definitely gaining popularity and becoming a cool spot. Not Latah. Latah's not ready for that.
But a day event, more in their liking.
I'm a cyclist, so I ride my bike to work or to play every single day. We're not anti-car, but we are pro-pedestrian, pro-cyclist, pro-public transport.
The city isn't pedaling fast to close down more streets.
Right now, we're really focused on 8th Street.
Considering improvements to its one fully closed road, but not closed off to the idea of more.
We are excited to look at that as a model for where spaces like this might be appropriate in other neighborhoods in the future.
To get to this Sunday's event, attendees are encouraged to bike bus, which is essentially a group of people meeting up ahead of the event and traveling to it together. So watch out for large pods of bikers this Sunday. The Boise Bicycle Project has already started planning for next year, and they said they want to be in Wensted Park neighborhood. But more importantly, Brian, the city said they kind of take these days where they close down certain streets, and organizations are pushing for those to look at whether or not they could close it permanently in the future, and it could be a good spot.
Okay. So, yeah, and then pedaling up Americana might be a little difficult, too. So
yeah.
keep that in mind. Watch out for those cyclists, as you said. All right.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Aspen. Well, our state representatives, our representatives in Congress are solving problems one acronym at a time. This time, Simpson wants more Idaho judges with the Judicial Understaffing Delays Getting Emergency Solved Act, or as he put it, Judges Act. Abby will tell you what that actually means and more in today's 4 in 1.
Crews are making fast progress on the Wapiti fire in Stanley. It's now 71% contained, which is a 16% increase from yesterday. Fire officials say yesterday's rain helped moderate fire activity, but also caused some falling debris. Speaking of the Wapiti fire, the Idaho Transportation Department said Highway 21 will reopen between Loman and Stanley Friday morning. A flagging operation will be guiding cars while crews work on repairing fire damage. ITD says expect delays and reminder, don't stop along the highway, especially in burned areas. The Idaho Department of Lands is auctioning off 8 state endowment-owned lots on Priest Lake in North Idaho valued at a combined nearly $11 million. The department says all the lots are under lease with cabins on them and the land is held in trust. If someone who is not the current owner has the highest bid, the land goes to them. But they will also have to pay the value of the house and personal property on the land to the previous owner. That auction is on Saturday. Representative Mike Simpson is trying to get a 3rd federal judge for Idaho. This week, he co-sponsored the Judicial Understaffing Delays Getting Emergency Solved Act, or Judges Act. They love their acronyms. The bill adds federal judgeships and another federal district judge to Idaho to help elevate understaffed and backlogged courts. The Broncos just keep making headlines, including this. Their first 3 home games are sold out before they've even made a snap on the blue. You can test your luck on tickets at Boise State's verified resale site on Ticketmaster. Boise State takes on Portland State this Saturday at 8 p.m. Don't forget to catch our Bronco Roundup Game Day show this Saturday at 9 a.m. right here on KTVB. Then tune in to Bronco Roundup live from the field an hour before kickoff at 7 p.m. on KTVB.com and our streaming app, KTVB+. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Abby Wilt.
If you're looking for a new screensaver on whatever your device may be, I think the view from Skycam 7 makes a great suggestion. We've got some of those clouds in the area, but still a beautiful view. We're not seeing much of the smoke right now, and so more of these nice conditions are ahead. Just really comfortable weather is ahead for this stretch with mild temperatures. We'll see the clouds at times with light winds drifting through the area as well. As we get closer to the weekend, those mountain morning temperatures will get a little extra chilly. So if you're going to be doing some camping, just keep that in mind. But for the temperatures across the area, again, mild is the name of the game with the 50s in some of those mountain spots right now, 65 over in Magic Valley areas, and lower 70s, with the exception of Ontario for the Treasure Valley. And so we'll continue this pattern for the next about 4 or 5 days, but specifically for the next 2 days, you can see, again, more of those comfortable temperatures will be sticking around, mainly in the mountains. We're talking 60s and 70s. And for the Treasure Valley, some spots getting close to 80 degrees. But that's not going to be for everybody. So in general, we're warming up a little bit tomorrow, but you can see tonight things staying very comfortable. And we warm up just a touch more as we go into the afternoon hour. So things, again, staying very much on the nice side. I'm sure this is exactly the forecast we were waiting for around July when we had all the hot temperatures and the smoke. So it's finally here, and we have more of the 70s that will be sticking around for us. You can see towards the end of your 7-day forecast, we do have a little bit of a warm up. So enjoy the 70s until then.
Right about the time we were talking about fires with federal land versus state land and how Governor Little saying the feds weren't doing enough to put out the fires here in Idaho. We got this statement from the U.S. Forest Service, who sent us this statement with regard to what basically saying the same thing, that they want the same thing as Idaho. The priority is to, save communities, citizens, landscapes in fighting these fires. They went on to say, well, how are they going to do that? Which sounds kind of like a firefighting brochure. It says, we currently have crews engaged actively in suppression of ongoing fire using risk-informed strategies developed to protect life and property while also mitigating the risks to our firefighters. So basically just a lot of words to say that they want the same thing that Idaho does, and they're working on it. But needless to say, there are still fires burning in Idaho. It could be a staffing thing, could be a budget thing. We'll see if we can get to the bottom of that one. All right, let's get to your comments. What also have to do with fires and suppression here in the state of Idaho. A little hard to accept the governor's statement about the wildfires' toll on Idaho's budget, says Johnny, particularly education funding. Idaho has been in the bottom of the barrel in school funding for decades. Why is that a factor now? Which is a point several people have made. Why doesn't Idaho do the firefighting for all the fires in Idaho and just bill the feds? Well, it requires a lot of people to do that too, Dave and Nampa, but I guess that's a good question. Just don't know how well that would go over. When it comes to pregnancy, IVF, et cetera, it's not just about something that is explicitly legal. It also matters if the abortion laws are so restrictive, doctors or private IVF companies are no longer willing to work in states like Idaho. So says Teresa. All right, we'll do it again tomorrow. We'll see you then.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.